This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski, and on today's episode, which is episode 143, we've got a ton to talk about. Alister Black possibly being repackaged the same way Cesaro was, so that worked out well for Cesaro. Also, this WWE superstar says this about Dixie Carter and TNA. We'll get you filled in on there. As well as Chris Jericho and his future with WWE. He had a little bit to say. Of course, we're going to go over the biggest topics and trends in AEW, NXT, Monday Night Raw, and SmackDown. And doing it with me, as always, he's the one. He's the only. He's my cousin. He's your cousin. He's everybody's cousin. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
I want to set the record straight so that if anybody doesn't know, Doc rules ass. And everybody needs to know that not only did AEW rule this week, I thought that War Hero or whoever that was that fought Cody Rhodes, I wasn't really a big fan of the indie scene and all that. But when he started that promo that he did, and he's like, War Hero rules ass, I was like, this is the corniest but most awesome tagline I have ever heard. Sign this guy right away. I was just like, what the hell is going on with this? I was so entertained by it. I'm like, awesome, right? Was it War Hero or whatever it was?
I think it was War Hawk. Might have been War Hero.
War something, but it was a great match. It was great. I'm like, I'm loving the Cody Rhodes, but that tagline was like, and then, I gotta look it up here while we talk, but it was so funny. It was great. It was so good that I can't even remember his name. I just remember that tagline. It was so good.
Dude, when he showed up on AEW, I was like, yep, this looks like an indie wrestler for sure. And then he's like, it was a good match. Like, I can't wait for us to get to AEW because I'm going to be honest with you. I'm just going to come out and say it right now. I think AEW was fantastic this week, and I think it was probably where you got your best wrestling. But before we get into that, and like we'll talk about War Hero, War Hawk, we'll talk about the Cody Rhodes match. We'll get to all of it. Let's start with SmackDown real quick. All right. So on SmackDown, Big E appears to be getting his singles push, which I think we both agree is long overdue. What do you make of Big E finally getting to go his own way? Because at this point, the New Day has been essentially dismantled. You got Kofi dealing with an injury. Xavier's still out with an injury. The only guy who's capable to get in the ring and bump around is Big E. So they're going to finally, not since the days of NXT, let this man go out there and be the absolute savage animal that he can be.
Yeah, I just think that it's disappointing because if you're Big E, you recognize that the only way I'm getting a singles push is if my team is all injured. And while it's great at the time to be able to have this push, I just think that WWE has just failed to recognize that this guy probably should have been pushed maybe a year ago. At the same time, still keeping the tradition of the New Day going on. It's great. I think it's awesome because I think he's along the lines of somebody that will get the credibility and respect like Kofi Kingston. And so when he gets a run, if he gets a title, whatever it may be, I think it'll be well deserved. But it just sucks because you know in the back of your mind it only happened because his crew got injured.
Yeah, it's, again, WWE missing the boat with a big-time wrestler. Not packaging him right or not putting him in a place where he can succeed. Big E was basically cut and ready to go. Like, the moment he came off the NXT manufacturing line, this guy was pretty much ready to go. And again, WWE dragged their feet, and they missed a big opportunity with him. It's good to see him finally getting his singles push. Hopefully, he gets to have a couple really good matches, and he gets to where he wants to be. I want to know long-term, which belt do you think he should be challenging for?
Ooh, right away. I would think that, don't you think? It kind of lends to him going after the Intercontinental title with AJ Styles. Because
absolutely.
That way you can make a star by putting him in the ring with one of the best wrestlers in the world. And he doesn't have to win necessarily, but he'll get the rub and the action off of going for that title and maybe even wins it. You never know.
I mean, look, with what you got going on with SmackDown, they had a fatal 4-way this past Friday, and it was some great action. So Grand Metalik is going to be the one who's going to face AJ Styles. What you can do with Big E is, and I think the Intercontinental belt is the strap for him to go after right away. You can have him basically wrestle his way through any one of those 4 guys and then get to AJ Styles, and you could have that match for SummerSlam, and you could have Big E take the strap off of AJ if you really wanted to. I think there's a lot you could do there. I think the way the timeline's going to set up, it's prime for the picking.
Great booking idea, man. That'd be great.
Now, on Monday Night Raw, I thought it was a total crock of shit. It's the best way I can put it, and I'm sorry to swear. I thought it was a total crock of shit the way Auska and Sasha Banks match ended. I thought this was totally disrespectful to Auska. I thought this was disrespectful to that championship belt. They were having a fantastic match. And in the back, you've got Kairi Sane getting manhandled by Bayley, and she's screaming for Auska. Auska caught between a rock and a hard place. What do? Do I leave this match that I have my title on the line for, and do I get counted out? Or do I go and save my friend? How do I handle this? Next thing you know, she's leaving the match. She gets counted out. Sasha Banks wins by default. And at the time, Auska had Sasha on the ropes. I thought this was a awful, awful way to take the belt off of Auska. I thought this was a awful way for Sasha to win this match. And honestly, I think on this show, you could probably argue these 2 women were having one of the best matches of the night. I thought it was absolute trash.
Again, 2 matches where the 2 women had quality in-ring performances only to be screwed by endings. And then what sucks is that because everybody knows what's going on with Kairi Sane, you couldn't even believe what was going on backstage. The air of believability went away because you're like, oh, okay, this is how Kairi Sane's going to go. And then within 5 minutes, she's tweeting, I'm out. And you're like, come on. This is not how you handle business. And we'll talk about it later. We'll tease it. The WWE Universe is not happy with what they're seeing. And it's reflected in a lot of different ways. So if you're going to continue to do these stupid endings, it's being reflected in television viewership for sure.
So then what we get is our build now for the World Championship for Monday Night Raw with Drew McIntyre. Randy Orton opens the show, calls out Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre later on in the show accepts. This is what you wanted. You wanted this. You were excited for this. You called for this last week. How do you want to see this play out now?
Absolutely. It's great in that you got to have Drew McIntyre go over. You got to have a great big man wrestling match. You got to have back and forth. You got to have it where Drew McIntyre goes over and he continues his run because of the fact that you have a megastar and you can only take his star higher, and that's what you have Randy Orton for. Randy Orton doesn't need a belt. Randy Orton doesn't have to destroy Drew McIntyre. So this match should be a classic. Even if you want to protect Randy Orton, you can have Randy just lose it. You could have a situation where they're having such a great match and Drew McIntyre takes like 5 RKOs. He keeps kicking out, and then Randy loses it and gets a chair and destroys Drew, and then forgoes the championship just to win. So you have Drew win, but via DQ, no one gets pinned, and then you can even carry this over into Survivor Series because this is money, and you got to find a way just to keep this going, potentially if you can get fans back. So I would roll this out for a couple more months. My mind. Also, you've got Randy Orton and Edge. They're planning on that for the future. So you need to keep Randy Orton high level, and there's no higher level than what Drew McIntyre is doing right now. So you keep him elevated until Edge can come back. So I like where your head's at. Also, I think Drew McIntyre going over is probably the smart move because, look, Randy Orton's the legend killer. He's not the superstar killer. And Drew McIntyre is the superstar in WWE right now. For that fact, he's the one carrying Monday Night Raw. So Randy Orton is a legend killer, not a superstar killer. So I love where your head's at. I like where you're going with that. What I don't like is I don't like seeing pushes stopped for young talent, guys who have a ton to give back to the business, and guys who look awesome in the ring. And I think what we've seen on Monday night was Aleister Black and Mustafa Ali's push come to an end. Aleister Black appears to be getting written off TV. We'll have some news and notes on what's going on with his future later on in the program. Also, Mustafa Ali, who just came back, he was part of a trade to Monday Night Raw because he was on SmackDown. I believe he was going to be the hacker. That storyline has quickly evaporated. Mustafa Ali comes to Monday Night Raw. He was traded for AJ Styles and gets a big win last week. This week, he's taking on Bobby Lashley. And
Next thing you know, Bobby Lashley almost no-selling all of his offense and ends up just crushing Mustafa Ali. I'm not sure how you feel about this, but I hate seeing guys who are ultra-talented. Guys like Alister Black who get you invested. I'm invested in Mustafa Ali. I love Mustafa Ali. I think he needs to be put over way more. I hate seeing their push just end. I hate seeing them get squashed, and I hate seeing them basically getting put back on a shelf and like, hey guys, we'll dust you off when we need a jobber. Could you imagine if either one of these two were in an organization that knew what the hell they were doing? I don't know, an organization, say like AEW. They would be superstars.
In my notes, I just put question mark, what are they doing? That's what I wrote here. I just was like, okay, you know what? WWE is just now in a position where they got so much talent, but they lack superstars, and the reason why they lack superstars is when pushes get off the ground, like Aleister Black, they just stop all of a sudden for no reason. And you got Mustafa Ali, who's put on some great wrestling matches. This is a great wrestler. You can't find something that's going to get him over. You can't find an opportunity for him to do his thing. There are so many opportunities to get indie talent in there in the ring, or local talent if you want to have a squash match for Bobby Lashley. You don't squash Mustafa Ali because Bobby Lashley's already it. He's already made. He doesn't have to squash a made guy. So I just put, what are you doing? It's another failed situation where you look at it and you say, it's WWE putting together matches, but without regards for character development or what the impact of a loss means. Remember, Monday Night Raw, when it first was started, was kind of like the highlight of great matches, whereas a show like Superstars highlighted jobbers and wrestlers like Kane and The Undertaker would just get in the ring, squash somebody in 6 minutes and move on. Raw was intended for quality matchups, and Mustafa Ali could have lost, but not like that. Bobby Lashley should have sold some of Mustafa Ali's offense, and that he didn't. Yeah, he's a monster, but he's already been a monster. So I understand that you're still trying to build Bobby Lashley, but how long is it going to freaking take? It's been a freaking 12 years, and you still need to use this as a way to establish that he's a monster. Just put a damn world title on him and let's keep it moving already. Come on.
I agree with you. I couldn't have said it better myself. Let's move to NXT. Now, I thought NXT was a good show. I don't think it was a great show. I'll be honest with you. I watched it basically in fast forward. Going through this program, I didn't think it had any really poignant moments. I thought you had a really good match with Johnny Gargano and Roderick Strong. I thought you had a nice main event that ended it with Finn Balor taking on Dexter Lumis and Timothy Thatcher. But otherwise, I thought it was just kind of a ho-hum show. And it got me to thinking, watching NXT, I'm like, all right, so who's the next real draw here? Who's the guy who, when he comes on TV, really captures my attention? Because I find myself drifting whenever I watch NXT. You know, either the segments aren't super interesting, or whatever's going on in the ring just doesn't hold my attention. And I'm like, who is the guy? And I think they've got some talent. They've got a ton of talented guys down there. But who is the guy who, when he shows up on screen, captures my attention, and I notice him before I notice everybody else? And for me, that guy is Dexter Lumis. He has this marine buzz cut. He's a pretty developed guy. He's got two awful sleeves. I think his tattoos are trash, but he's got a good build. He wrestles in what looks like Carhartt pants, and he just has this million-mile-an-hour stare. Like, he just can stare right through you, and he just captures your attention. So I want to know, who on NXT is the most interesting character currently that is capturing the Doc's attention? And you got a ton of guys to pick from. I mean, there's Finn Balor, of course, out there. You've got Keith Lee out there. You've got Killian Cross out there. I mean, there's a bunch of guys, and that's just the males. Not even talking about the females with Rhea Ripley or Io Shirai. Absolutely.
But obviously, the person that caught my attention is Killian Cross with Scarlett Bordeaux. I'm like, oh, holy cow. This is a complete package. This is a guy that's destined to be a world champ, maybe in NXT and in WWE. So obviously outside of Keith Lee, who's a superstar, everybody believes in him. Everybody thinks he's the next big thing, maybe even at the level of a Brock Lesnar. I think Cross can come in right away and for a good 6 months to a year period can come in and dominate if Keith Lee gets pushed fast-tracked to the main show because WWE is desperately in need of some star power on the big shows. Absolutely, you were right. NXT was okay, and I wrote 2 notes down. I wrote, okay, Undisputed Era, solid. Seeing them reunite, kind of getting back together was cool. And then I just said, Finn Balor, what a waste. I'm like, this Finn Balor doesn't deserve to be main eventing a Wednesday night show. You know, this is NXT. As much as Triple H wants his baby to be considered a third brand, it should just be developmental so that you can pump stars into Raw and SmackDown. That's what it should be. Finn Balor does not need to be in NXT. And I just was like, every time I just don't believe it. It hasn't been a good run. It hasn't meant a whole heck of a lot. He wrestles great, but you just feel like, why is a superstar wrestling in NXT? And so even though Triple H has done the work to make it a great brand, and I know the brand is quality wrestling with 20-minute matches on the takeovers, it still, to me, is a brand that is representative of developmental. And I want to just see that aspect of wrestling shown a couple times a week on Raw and SmackDown. Give one match 15, 20 minutes, who you want to highlight a week, and let's keep it moving. But Killian Cross is on the fast track. I was disappointed with NXT. I just thought that it was, when you're in the mix in a competition with AEW and you kind of know what they're going to put on the air, that wasn't the best way to represent NXT. I just thought this week was a step backwards.
I agree with you. Let's move on to what I think was probably the best show of the week, and that was AEW Dynamite. I thought we got another fantastic show from start to finish, and watching the show, there was something that happened in the middle of it that just made me laugh out loud, and out loud I said, this is what wrestling should be. There are moments in this show where the superstars, the announcers, everybody involved, the producers, they don't take themselves so seriously. They allow them a moment to laugh. And there was the point where Chris Jericho was out on the stage with his 5 guys, and he looks over at Santana, and he's like, do I still smell like, I don't remember what he asked if he smelled like, and he's like, you kind of smell like cat pee. And then Jericho gets mad and storms to the back, and then it was one of the other guys from Pride and Powerful comes over, he's like, it's cat pee! It's cat pee! And you could just see the announcers lose it. You could see Taz absolutely lose it. And at that moment, I lost it. I thought it was funny. I was like, this is what professional wrestling should be. These guys are out here. They cut a very serious promo. They take a step back for some humor, and they mix it all together, and they deliver it to you in such a way that it is absolutely believable for all of these characters involved. And there were 5 guys up there, and they sold all of it. And it was great. AEW does such a fantastic job of packaging their programming and giving it to you. On top of that, they're bringing different guys in. We talked about Warhorse, right? Bring Warhorse in for a match with Cody for the TNT Championship match, right? This is a belt that you wanted WWE to bring back, a television title where you have it defended every week, and there's some pride and there's some prestige to it. And Cody goes out there every single week and defends this belt. And it's open to everybody. And you've seen guys come in from the indies. You had guys last week who were like, hey, you got to sign Kingston. Kingston's fantastic. Kingston made you buy into his promo. This week, you got a guy who's over there talking about how he's the king of ass. I mean, it just, you got different guys. You got different guys doing different things, man. And it's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so corny, but it was corny in a funny way in that this rocker dude, but he could wrestle. That's the highlighting part, is that Cody is highlighting the art of and he's showing respect to the indie scene. And these guys are coming in, and I think the opportunity to wrestle on television, to wrestle Cody, everybody stepping their game up. And that's what professional wrestling is just giving people opportunities to show up, let them do their thing, let them get over. And if someone has a funny line, I just thought it was hilarious because after the match, he does his thing, and he's just like, Warhorse rules ass. And thank you guys for letting me. I was like, the more he says it, the funnier it is and to highlight it. But then in terms of the funniness, but then you also hit the serious side, which is the highlight of the week was the promo from MJF. He's just like, dude, it's my time. It was good. It was believable. And he's like, look, I'm the future of this company. I deserve to be in the title mix, and here's why. And it was believable. It was intense. It made you pay attention. So the show, AEW, was unbelievable. And then the teases were great. I mean, I wasn't really thrilled with the main event with Moxley and Darby Allin. And then now that's going to kick off into a title match next week. It doesn't look right. Darby Allin needs to put on like 20 pounds. You know, it doesn't look exactly right. Darby Allin looks like a cruiserweight compared to Jon Moxley, but he can do his thing in the ring. So AEW put on a very entertaining 2 hours. I was into it for the whole time. And cause, like you saw, I checked out Impact and I watched the 2-hour show. And I'll say this, quick review on Impact. It was good, but the production value in the backstage was not the best.
Right.
It's like all the promos were like bright lighted, and RVD's character, his valet is played out. I mean, they got to upgrade. If you're going to go on national television, you got to have just, you know, a little bit more production value. It was great to see Gallows and Anderson. It was great to see the in-ring work was solid. Promos, amazing. Just the production just has to go up 5% because it's just all the promos were backstage, and there's like this bright light that it looks like you're doing it from a hall, and it doesn't look right. So they got to just step it up 5% in the production, get a little bit more in the backstage, and I don't think it would take that much of an investment to up the backstage work, and then you got yourself a winner. There's great talent. There's amazing talent at Impact. They got names. They're in the mix.
Let me put it to you like this, right? Forever and a day, Bleacher Report has never paid attention to Impact Wrestling. Now they're doing full reviews on what their shows were. And I don't have the channel that Impact comes up on. I have YouTube TV and I don't have access to it. So I have to follow along with whatever Bleacher Report provides. And according to Bleacher Report, it was a very good show. But again, like you said, production has always been an issue for them. I think going forward, if you're okay with it, I think if you can take in some of Impact and then give us a review on our programming, I think that would be great, because I hate to neglect them because they've got solid wrestlers and I think they're doing a really good job. And I think this reiteration of what Impact Wrestling is, I think is going to be very, very good. So I feel like we have to give them their due.
Yeah, and it's great too because they run a 2-hour show. They do like an hour show later that had a review of some great matches, some history. And I got to see Kurt Angle take on AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. It was a good hour of wrestling. Kurt Angle and AJ Styles went half an hour long, and it was Austin Aries and Samoa Joe, and it was such a great hour of wrestling. So I was like, man, there's a lot of history in that company. If they just up the production value, RVD, I mean, it's good that he can still cut a promo, but they got to just tighten it up a little bit, and they're in the mix. They can do it. My wife Andrea was like, they're there? Why'd they go there? And she's like, why didn't they go to AEW? I said, it just, for 100%, they wanted to be the big fish in the little pond. They wanted to be the it team, and they are, for sure. Their intro song is cool. So I like what they're doing. The tag team wrestling is good. The wrestling's good. It's entertaining. It'll keep you engaged, and I'll definitely bring the updates as to what's going on with Impact. But man, AEW, they had themselves a great week. And then next week, we're all going to pay attention to the debate between Orange Cassidy and Chris Jericho with a special guest moderator, and then highlighted by a title match with Jon Moxley. So in my mind, you got to tune into AEW and DVR NXT for the foreseeable future.
I agree 100%. And before we move away from AEW, I want to circle back to it real quick, and I want to talk about you brought up MJF in his great promo. This company has two fantastic young wrestlers in MJF and Hangman Page, who are going to be premier headlining stars in the very near future. Right now, what you have with AEW is you have a lot of guys who are in their prime right now. These two gentlemen will be the ones to carry this company going forward. And you're on the precipice of seeing it right now. I think something else awesome with AEW, and we didn't even talk about it yet, and it's kind of a shame that it got bumped all the way to the back, but Matt Cardonna, a.k.a. Zack Ryder, showed up on AEW at the end of Cody Rhodes and Warhorse's match. And, dude, he looks amazing. He looks absolutely jacked. He is in such good shape. I think he was a little bit over tan, but
exactly.
He looks freaking credible, and I can't wait to see him in the ring. He came out, he looked like a big-time star. Not what they used to do with him in WWE. He looked like he was a legitimate big-time star.
And that's what you're supposed to do when you know, okay, I got a couple-month wait, my boy's going to hook me up, I'm just going to hit the gym because you're poised for a run. And that's what you're supposed to do with the time, is just get in the gym, work out 2 times a day, and get yourself ready for the next 5 years because it's time, man. He was marinating for so freaking long. I mean, how embarrassing for WWE to have this guy have a highlight match at WrestleMania. The crowd's going apeshit. He wins a ladder match only to drop the belt the next night. I mean, how just cruel and unusual that they would do him like that, especially a guy that built his way up. I mean, he tried everything to get Vince's attention. He tried everything, internet shows, just putting his name out there, being entertaining. It's just, I don't like, and to highlight continuously the struggles of WWE, because in all the interviews now that you're hearing away from the ring, EC3 went on a podcast and was like, I don't understand the process there in regards to how this thing is going. And WWE is headlined and led by Vince McMahon. But Vince now is 74 years old, and I just would love to interview Triple H and ask him, you're watching WWE's ratings plummet. And the news was this week's Raw was the lowest rated Raw in 27 years, at 1.4. So the audience, it's not because of COVID, it's because it's because a lot of your big stars are out. It's because Vince is taking talent and just stopping and starting pushes. I mean, look at a character like Rusev. Rusev, and I know you'll maybe talk about it in news and notes, probably lost his passion for wrestling because of all the stupid angles that he got put in. And so it just doesn't make sense right now that Vince McMahon is making so many decisions. Dude should retire. If Triple H took over, you and I both would know that within 1 year, you would develop right away 10 new stars that could draw money. 10, no less than 10 could become new stars that would draw money. But Vince has got his hand on everything at 75 years old and is still tinkering and over tinkering, and the sheer number of just ideas that just go nowhere is now indicative of a company that's going backwards. And you hate to see it. It's been like a 2-year slide, but this COVID has really hurt the product. And I don't know, they're scuffling. They just aren't doing enough good work. And it's unfortunate because the fans are talking and the results are bad and the ratings now are bad too. So Vince has got to give it up. Someone's got to tell him, Vince, just relax, bro. You got $1 billion. Sit back and be a fan. Give us a review. Do a podcast. Get back on the announce table. Give it over to Triple H like right now. It's good, bro. You did your thing. The company's $1 billion. The only thing that Vince can do now is hurt the company. His ideas are great. He should be the consigliere. He should be the advisor. But you can't let go of a talent like Matt Cardona only to then have him go over to your rival, and he's going to be a star. He's going to be a world champion. You can see it if he loses that stupid tan.
He just looks a little bit orange, man. It's okay.
Exactly. I thought I was like, is my TV jacked up? What's up with this guy? I was like, that's a little bit much, bro. You might have stayed in the sun a little bit too much. It looks unnatural.
Did you like all the chest and body hair though?
Yeah, exactly. He's a big dude, and it's good. It's good that he came in. But what I had texted you was the debuts are good because we get to see fresh talent. There's always surprises. The thing is that I'm, looking at it like they should make it bigger. Music, lights go out. They have to make it like more of a big entrance. And it's more indicative of like the same thing like when a debut would happen in WCW. Oh, who's that? Oh, it's Matt. It's Cardona. Who's that? JR's like, I didn't recognize him. I was like, okay. You should have just had the lights go out, a spotlight, some great booming music, and it's like, holy crap, it's Matt Cardona. Finally, he's here. It's been speculated on. And they should have had it just a little bit different. I feel like The debuts are good, but they need to be bigger, more impactful.
I think JR, in his spots, I think there comes a point where you just kind of got to wave the white flag. I wish JR would go more into
advisor,
yeah, just something in the back. Because I think what you have with Tony Schiavone, what you have with Taz, what you have with Excalibur, what you have with, Chris Jericho's amazing on commentary. He's absolutely fantastic. The day his in-ring career ends, I will be very, very sad, but I will be so excited because he is so damn good on a microphone, and he has no problem taking mistakes that he makes and just owning them and making them his own. Like Demo God, I think was an accident. I think it was supposed to be Demigod, and then he just turned into Demo God. He's like, whatever, let's roll with it. It's a guy, again, this is what AEW does. They don't take themselves way too serious. They just kind of, hey, let's lean into it. Let's have fun. Everybody's out here to enjoy themselves, and that's what they give us. They give us a product where everybody is having a good time, and that's all you can ask for.
All right, cuz, hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What caught your attention this week? What made your list?
So you alluded to it, Rusev, and I haven't had a chance to double confirm it, but it sounds like Rusev is going to retire from wrestling to become a full-time gamer. Rusev has a Twitch account, and he does a whole lot on his Twitch account, especially involving video games. So it sounds like he's going to go on to become a professional video gamer. I don't think this will last too long. This is just my commentary on it. I don't think it'll last too long. I think this might be one of those things where it's a year-long, maybe a 2-year-long hiatus from wrestling, but don't be surprised if you see him back maybe in AEW. Speaking of AEW, Chris Jericho doesn't see WWE in his future anytime soon, saying it's not going to happen. I really enjoy being in All Elite Wrestling. I loved my time with WWE. I love Vince McMahon. I learned a lot. I had a lot of fun. But listen, you can't stay in the same place forever. Chris Jericho, on that same interview, also believes that this NXT star will be the real deal, stating that Keith Lee has huge potential. He's a mean-looking guy. Great packaged, him and Scarlett. They look great ring entrances. I think over time, as he gets to become a better worker, he's going to be very big in WWE. They need to get him out of NXT. I think it would be better to just have him in WWE. They've got to build him up as they do, but I think he's going to be a big star. So he was talking about Keith Lee as well as Killian Cross. During a Q&A on his Twitch channel, AJ Styles had a lot to say. First is that he will not be a part of TNA's Hall of Fame if he is working for somebody else. He said, it was offered to me, but I was working for Ring of Honor in New Japan at the time, and I said, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to a TNA event when I'm working for someone else. I didn't think it was right, and I was still wrestling. I always think it's weird when people are still wrestling and you want to put them in a Hall of Fame. Wait until they're retired. As long as I'm working for WWE, I definitely won't do it. Not saying I wouldn't ever, but if I'm working for another company, I'm not doing it. He also commented on his former boss at TNA, Dixie Carter, and said, Vince Russo as a person, I love the guy. And we butted heads as far as him writing, even in TNA, but I realized when we butted heads, it was because he was getting things from Dixie the whole time. It must have been very difficult to work with this woman who has no idea how wrestling works and wanted everything to be done to it, and it didn't make any sense. We butted heads with him as a writer, but due to Dixie Carter getting involved a lot with creative. Do I believe Dixie ruined Impact? Well, it was TNA back then, and 100%. Impact, there was a time when it was really gaining ground. The problem was Dixie wanted to be WWE light, and that's not what people wanted. They wanted to see something else. All she had to do was let us do what we did. It was really that simple. Had she left it to the writers, I think TNA would still be around and be bigger than what they are. But not knowing what's best for business, she hurt TNA. In a recent interview on Busted Open Radio, it sounded like EC3 agreed on Carter's mishandlings of the company as well. Sportskeeter Tom Cohen noted that Vince McMahon looks at Aleister Black the same way he looked at Cesaro. Vince thinks that there's something missing about Aleister Black. It's similar to how he feels about Cesaro. Keep an eye on this one because we all know how that went. That was Tom's quote on what's going on with Aleister Black right now. This is why Black was written off television. He's going to be repackaged. I want to know what you think about repackaging Aleister Black at this stage of the game.
I think it's stupid. I mean, Aleister Black was successful. It literally is a character that can work. What's missing? I mean, he's violent, amazing entrance, can talk when you need him to. What more do you need? What do you want to do? Change him into a corny name? I don't see it. I mean, Aleister Black is an unbelievable character. What are you going to turn him into? Are you going to turn him into a dude that wears pants and a belt? I mean, he's a tattooed guy that's unique. So I would say that if you're not happy with someone's main run in Raw or SmackDown, just send him back down to NXT. You know, Aleister Black, Finn Balor, I would buy that. Aleister Black maybe taking on Killian Cross. Aleister Black doing something with Undisputed Era. If you're not happy, you don't change Aleister Black. That was successful. You just send him back down or let him be a star somewhere else. It's like, I just think that they're overthinking it. And, okay, I think Vince, when he looks at it and he says, I need a character change out of this guy, is he really going to get that much more money and prestige out of the character than Aleister Black? It's a great character. What you say is, okay, I don't understand why, if you want to tinker with a gimmick, you don't just put him with somebody or let him have a little stable or give him a manager. Start with the stuff that's the basics. It just seems like if you want to change it up, you can do a little bit of lighter change-ups than changing the gimmick altogether. So I disagree with it wholeheartedly, and I don't think it's going to work. I think you're starting to see the beginning of the end of Aleister Black, or he's just going to be a guy that cashes his check, doesn't say nothing, and has a nothing career for the next 2 years.
See, I don't understand why you got to repackage him. I mean, again, this is the problem with WWE and the main roster, right? So his character works. His character worked in NXT. If you gave it time, I think it would work on the main roster. The issue is Vince has to tinker with everything, and he has to be in sole control over all of it. And then what you get is you get this really bad product. And I think that's what we're going to end up getting with a guy like Aleister Black, who has all the talent in the world if just given the opportunity to go out there and be able to do his thing. It's really, really unfortunate. That's all we have for this week's news and notes.
Props to our guy Dennis. He made a little bit of news with his Wrestling with Sports podcast. He had Gallows and Anderson on, and they revealed, that podcast is great, Dennis. Back in the podcasting game with Jason Kendall and Dimitri Young. They talk wrestling, and I like it because you get to see the boyhood dreams and professional athletes who love wrestling, breaking it all down with Dennis, who's a great host. And Gallows and Anderson said there's going to be a collaboration with New Japan and Impact, almost 100%. They're going to bring back the Bullet Club. And so that was awesome to see Dennis get some props and to see his podcast written about all over the interwebs. Props to him. He always does great work in the podcast game. And he was a big advocate for us way back in the day. So props to Dennis. Listen to him.
He is our podfather.
Absolutely.
Gave us some of the best advice we ever got when we first started podcasting.
Absolutely. And he's still strong. And he's still doing his thing. So make sure you listen to the Wrestling with Sports podcast and follow Dennis on Twitter. Follow Adam on Twitter as well, at Adam RSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you're watching a show, if we had a take that you didn't agree with, shoot us a message. We definitely enjoy interacting and talking wrestling with the supporters out there. Thanks again, cuz. Tune in next week to the next edition of the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.